computer is picking up a strange signal. Here, sir, you better take a look at it.
Hi, and welcome to Sci-Fi Snacks. I'm Liz J. Bradley, a science fiction author and poet who adores short fiction and snacks. Each episode of Sci-Fi Snacks is a short and sweet, or salty, discussion of what I loved, what I learned, and what I snacked on while reading new-to-me short science fiction. As always, links to the short stories are in the show notes, so if you haven't read this week's story, head on over, pick up your favorite snack, and then join me as we discuss this week's story. Hey all, welcome back. Season 2, Episode 4 of Sci-Fi Snacks with me, Liz. I'm so excited to talk to you about this week's story. It's called After the Rain by P.A. Cornell. And I found this story through social media, actually. I follow P.A. Cornell on social media. She's one of those people who has great writing advice, but also just is entertaining to follow. And she always has stories coming out. Amazing short story writer. Check out her website. I'll have everything linked below. I knew going into this season that I had to find something. I was like, I know she'll have something that will fit with this season's theme. And I just want to give her a shout out and have other people go follow her because she just has a wonderful account. I went on her website and I did some digging and found that this year in May of 2025, so it's super recent as well, she has a story called After the Rain, which is Solarpunk. Totally fit in with the season, so I put it on the schedule and I was very excited. What I was also excited about was this story is both in print on the website, but it's also in podcast form. So you get an audio version. And obviously, I love podcasts and I love audiobooks. I'm sure if you're listening to a podcast, you are not one of the weirdos with this opinion, but like audiobooks are books. Consuming an audiobook is reading. Let's not be weird about it. Half the time I look back and I don't usually keep track of which version of a book I've read. So whether it was the audiobook or the ebook or in print. And I was actually looking at my reading list for the year and I was talking with my mom this morning. Hi, Mom. She listens to the podcast. She's the best. She and my dad sit there and listen. Hi. But I was talking with my mom about books that I had read this year. And I brought up Everything is Tuberculosis by John Green. And I literally said, I was like, oh, and I hear the audiobook is great. And then I was like, wait, I listened to the audiobook. I did because I wanted to hear John Green narrate it to me. So even I don't remember because I consumed the book. Whether I consumed it with my eyes or my ears, I consumed it. It's in my brain. I read it. So let's not be weird about that. So this week, you have the opportunity, instead of consuming this short story with your eyes, you can listen to Isabel J. Kim narrate this on Escape Pod. This is episode 991 of Escape Pod. First of all, that's amazing. I'm sitting here on episode, 16 of my own podcast, thinking about it would take me so long. I can't even do the math. I'm not a numbers person. How long it would take me on a weekly format where I don't actually do every single week of the year to get to 991 episodes. That's amazing. That's an amazing back catalog. But you can, back to this, you can listen to Isabel J. Kim, whose story was our very first podcast episode. Why Don't We Just Kill the Kid in the Omelas Hole? Remember her? It was amazing. If you haven't listened to that episode, go back, check it out. So good. It was my first podcast episode, so give me a little grace. I get better every time, but amazing story. And so I could not resist listening to this story for this week. And to pair a snack with this story, I decided to make lemon bars. Now, for me, Solarpunk, just as a vibe, I haven't read a lot of Solarpunk prior to this, but I've seen a lot of fan art. So I feel like certain genres really attract fan art. And Solarpunk is one of those ones that I feel like maybe it's just my algorithm. I've seen so much of it and I love it. I think it's so cool. It's like just beautiful and sunny and optimistic. There's always like stained glass in it. And I've got these ideas. I've got a million little pieces for like my own Solarpunk story, but none of them are coherent. You know, they're just like elements of things. And a lot of it comes from fan art that I've seen that's just like Solarpunk. So in my brain, I was like, it's bright, it's sunshiny, that says lemons to me. So I decided to make lemon bars. And I've eaten them a million times from the store, but I've never actually made my own lemon bars. And so this is where I jumped to the internet and started Googling. And one of the rabbit holes I went down was I found a subreddit called Old Recipes, and it's a whole community of people who share these old family recipes or just different things that are they're kind of like tried and true. There's your social proof of this isn't some AI slop that just got generated for likes and clicks. Like, this is in my grandma's handwriting. This one was typed. It was like typewriter typed though, of grandma's lemon bars. So we'll talk a little bit more about that later, but suffice it to say they were amazing. The only thing I would change is I followed the directions to a T, like I try to do for the podcast and make sure I don't have too many disasters. But I don't trust when a recipe says to not grease your pan. And I trusted it. I was like, okay, we're going to put this down. I used a glass pan because I was like, that'll probably release a little bit better. Yeah, no, I would grease the pan next time. It doesn't matter that there were like 2 full sticks of butter in the cookie. It's still like, I want it to slide out super easy. I had some crumbly cookie bottoms trying to get them out of the pan. Still delicious, but I'm going to grease the pan next time. And that's what I love. Like, I don't know about you, but my cookbooks, the one that I use the most is one that my sister compiled for me that she typed up for my birthday or Christmas. I think it was Christmas while she was in grad school. She was a little broke and she was like, I don't know what to get you. And I was like, you know what? I have a whole folder full of recipes that I use all the time and they come from all over. It was like the back of boxes cut out and like certain printouts that were all dirty and everything. I was like, if you can type these all up for me and put them in one place so that I'm not like, where's the back of that stuffing box so that I can make the recipe I like, do that. And I still, to this day, like I have all these little notes that I've handwritten on these recipes of little changes that I've made and tweaks and things like that. So this grandma's lemon bars, I would scratch out ungreased pan and definitely hit that pan with a little Pam before I press those cookies in. All right, now on to this week's story. After the Rain by P.A. Cornell. P.A. Cornell is a Chilean-Canadian speculative fiction writer. A graduate of the Odyssey Workshop, her stories have been published in over 50 magazines and anthologies, including Lightspeed, Apex, and 3 Best of anthologies. In addition to becoming the first Chilean Nebula finalist in 2024, Cornell has been a finalist for the Aurora and World Fantasy Awards, was longlisted for the BSFA Awards, and won Canada's Short Works Prize. When not writing, she can be found assembling intricate Lego builds or drinking ridiculous quantities of tea, sometimes both. For more on the author and her work, visit her website, pacornell.com, and that'll be linked for you down in the show notes. So the official Wikipedia definition of this week's subgenre, Solarpunk, is that Solarpunk is a literary, artistic, and social movement closely related to the Hope Punk movement that envisions and works towards actualizing a sustainable future interconnected with nature and community. The solar represents solar energy as a renewable energy source and an optimistic vision of the future that rejects climate doomerism, while punk refers to the do-it-yourself and countercultural, post-capitalist, and sometimes decolonial aspects of creating such a future. This is the answer to cyberpunk. So cyberpunk envisions this kind of gritty technology, usually doom-filled future. Solarpunk is the other side of that. And one of the things that I've realized as I kind of dive into these subgenres and do all this research is how much they're in conversation with each other about different views of our future. And I think that that's really cool. It's kind of like not everybody is built to be a politician and stand up and campaign for things, but I think writers are uniquely placed to kind of campaign for the futures that they want through story and seeing all these different subgenres. Some people are disposed to show us futures that they don't want as a warning, that they think we're headed towards, with authoritarianism and all of that. And then other people are inspired to show us what could be. And I think there's a place for all of it. I don't think that there's one that's better than the other. There are definitely, as I read more, there are definitely subgenres that I feel more aligned with in terms of like practical, on the ground. I think this is the future we should strive for. Or the social movement part of that definition. There's definitely, I'm not going to lie, I'm a little more cynical. And I don't know if I would have said that a couple of years ago, because I've always been a very hopeful person. I wrote a whole hope punk, far future book. But I think that Solarpunk can tend towards an overly idealized vision of the future. And I'm not talking just this story or whatever. I'm, on a genre level. I'm not here on this podcast to pick apart any specific author or any specific work. That's not what I'm here for at all. I'm just speaking in a broader sense that I think maybe just because of the way the world is right now, I'm feeling a little more cynical and a little less hopeful, although that makes hope punk and solar punk all that much more important. So I think it's important to be reading all of these different visions of the future and seeing, if we can't have all of it, if my brain is like, yeah, that's never going to happen. Are there pieces of it? Are there things worth striving towards? I think that a big social commentary that I try to fight against is the idea that there's any perfect solution, because there isn't. There's literally nothing. Politics, I always loved the metaphor of it's public transportation. You get on the bus that's going to get you closest to what you want. You don't just say, okay, burn it all down because it's not going exactly where I want, because you go in an imperfect world with what you've got. And what I think is interesting is reading these solarpunk stories where it is a more perfect world. And kind of challenging myself, being like, all right, could we make this possible? The cynic in me says no, but I'd like to hope that maybe we could get close. So this week's story, After the Rain, starts right after some rain. After a rainstorm, we meet our main character, Amalia, and she is a bike messenger who notices a few strange things on her morning ride to what's called the Toolshare. And the Toolshare is essentially like a place where you go to share tools. Somebody has got them all. It's like a library of stuff. So you go and you can borrow the tools that you need and trade and things like that. So we've already got a theme here of community. But Amalia has noticed that the gate for the chickens was open and some chickens were missing. Then when she gets to the Toolshare, all the electricity is off. The solar panels are all messed up and one of the panels are missing. We are told through this character's point of view that this is super weird because stealing is not something that happens in their community because there's no need for it. If you need something, the community provides it in one way or another. There's bartering, there's kind of mutual aid. It is the embodiment of mutual aid. So somebody coming in and stealing some chickens or stealing a solar panel, this is super weird. This is not normal. So she and some of the other community members are like, this doesn't sound like it's anybody inside the community. And then the next day, some other stuff has gone missing. Some like plants that they knew were growing in a certain place were gone. Some mushrooms were gone. Some of the mushrooms, they're like, oh, those are the medicine mushrooms that can make you really sick if you don't know how to use them. So they're worried about what's going on. And as a community, they decide we need to find out who's stealing. So they kind of have an overnight stakeout, and we follow our main character along with her friend who's a potter. They have this stakeout overnight, and they find this teenage boy. His name's Brian. And we find out that they catch him, and he's the one who's been stealing stuff. And now he's trying to steal plants that are medicine because his dad is super sick. Because, surprise, dad ate some bad mushrooms. So they're like, hey, we're going to bring you into town. The town is like, hey, stealing is like, that's like a big no-no in our society. But we also get that like you're a kid and you guys are just trying to survive. And we find out that Brian has a little brother and dad, and they were in this van leaving the city trying to get to the coast. And their van broke down. They didn't have enough gas. Ostensibly in this future, there was still fuel that's like fossil fuel. So he was trying to steal the solar panel to charge the battery and do different things, and just found himself in this mess. And the community is like, hey, we can help you. Like, you just have to ask. And to Brian, this is like a novel thing, because we get this glimpse of a world outside that is not this ideal that we have been living in the beginning of this story. And so it's resolved in the end where they do help him out. And Amalia knows where they're trying to go on the coast, and she's got these flower seed bombs she's got to go throw and do some guerrilla gardening and stuff. So she's like, yeah, I'll take you. And they fix up the van, get them all set, and she takes them. And then at the end, it's this beautiful picture of like, it's raining and pouring down. And she's like, some people just love the rain. She lets herself get soaked, and she just kind of luxuriates in the rain on this journey. So that's the story. And I think what I loved about this story the most was how well Cornell weaved in the world building with the social commentary. So she built this community, and it was very normalized. Everything was, this was normal. This is how the world just worked. But it feels so very foreign to a modern reader, because it's things like stealing. Who would ever steal? That's absurd in their community. Things like the Toolshare, where it's like, hey, I'm here for you to fix my bike again. And it's not like, oh gosh, I'm so stressed because like my bike's not working and that's how I make a living and I need to go get it fixed again. And it was just like, hey, I can't get to you right now because like, obviously my Toolshare is broken and we've got to get these things fixed, but like, I'll get to you. It's so interesting because the things that would be normally huge stressors in a world like ours, like in the modern age, are just not. They're solved. It's all fixed. And it's just woven in so well to this narrative. We've got a potter who, he's borrowed some tools. So she's got to go and get those tools back for the woman so she can fix the solar panels. And she brings the potter honey and some other things. And the potter is making air conditioners out of terracotta. Like, who knew? That was definitely an I learned moment in this story, was like the alternate forms of things like air conditioning, which is a huge drain on our electric grid and our systems and things like that. There are alternatives on a small scale. And so that was cool. I liked learning that bit, but like, hey, he was making these big vats that would work as air conditioning for their town hall, because we're still human in this world. It may be ideal, but they still don't like being sweaty inside the big town hall where they meet all the time because they're community. So see, like all of these things are woven together so well in the story of, I've got a really good vision of what this future looks like, what the proposition is here, without it being like a big info dump, without it being if you're not a writer, a lot of the time writers will do a whole lot of world building work where they think about things like the air conditioning and the plumbing and the money systems and the social structures. And like you have documents, at least sci-fi and fantasy writers, we have to do this because we're creating new worlds. We'll have all these documents of how do things work in this world? What is money? What do we barter? How do we deal with crime? All of those things. And so in this story, it wasn't a big info dump, which is a lot of new writers are like, I know this, and everybody, like my reader needs to know all of it to understand the world. And we don't. We don't need to know it all right away. We need to know what's important to your character through their point of view. And this is a really good story that a good example of how to do that we got so much information about what this kind of solar punk future could look like without being a paragraph of world building right at the top that is just, quite frankly, uninteresting until you have a character like to connect. Like, why is it important? It's only important when it's important to the character. So like it was important to her that there's a tool share because she needed to fix her bike. It was important to her that we're coming up with a solution for air conditioning because she's at this town hall meeting and is sweating, and that added discomfort physically is making it difficult to like work with the other people in her community to come up with a solution when they find out somebody's been stealing. So like it's brilliant ways of weaving in the world building without info dumping. And so if that's something that you're struggling with as a writer, go read this story and pick apart all of the places that she drops these world building nuggets in a way that makes sense in the story so that when you come away from it, you've got this really full picture of what this future looks like without her ever having to give you a textbook definition of anything. What I really wanted to see more of, I think, is I was super interested. Like, I love this, that we got this little glimpse of this isn't the whole world. We've got these 3 people from the outside, these strangers coming in. There's this saying that there's only really ever 2 stories in the world. It's the main character goes on a journey or a stranger comes to town. And this is a stranger comes to town story because we've got these people who are clearly outsiders, and we get this glimpse of a world that's probably a lot more like our own, or our own after some sort of societal collapse or disaster. And those 2 worlds intersect. And me personally, I would love more from the outsider's point of view. And I think that's just personal taste. Like, those are the stories I'm really interested in, but it doesn't necessarily work for a Solarpunk story here where we've got this kind of normalized, closer to utopian society. But I thought that was another brilliant bit of world building, is that we could sit here and speculate on this is working on this micro scale here, but when we zoom back out, what does this world look like? We've got these little hints of it's not all as rosy. She's doing this guerrilla gardening because not everybody believes the same as they do. There are still these big heat sinks where, it's still concrete everywhere. And so she's going to take these little flower bombs, so it's like clay and seeds and things like that, and just go throw them in places to grow wildflowers and stuff. You can see, if you go down the internet rabbit hole of guerrilla gardening, I know I watch one, I think it's a guy on a skateboard, and I see him all the time, and he's got like a shaker, like a salt shaker almost, of seeds, and he goes and he skateboards and does his little shaker shake of flower seeds, and then he goes back and you see the beautiful flowers instead of just like dead dirt. So it's that sort of idea. And so we get these little glimpses of the outside world is not quite as progressive as our main character's community is. And I think that all ties back to the snack that I had here. Going to this Reddit community of old recipes, I found this community that was really looking for the tried and true vetted solutions. The recipes that aren't AI telling you to put glue on your pizza. Like, Google that if you're interested. I cannot go into that anymore. But like, If it's a recipe that's withstood the test of time and it's in grandma's handwriting or it was pulled out of your cookbook, like that's going to be a good one. And that's the kind of community that I'm interested in. And I love that there are places like that on the internet. Solarpunk is not necessarily connected to technology in that way, but like in the world we live in, we've got these little pockets of sunshine on the internet. If you go looking for them, there's a whole lot of darkness. There's a whole lot of awful, but there are still places where humans are connecting and sharing. And seeking that out is so important because it's so easy. All of the slop, all of the bad, all of the doom and gloom is shoved in your face first. You have to go looking for the good stuff. This recipe was back to basics, just like Solarpunk. So we've got butter, flour, sugar. That's it, and I, as somebody who uses margarine a lot, but less now, like this is the kind of time where it's like, no, you use butter. Use the best butter that you can. So I think we're doing good this season. The snacks have all really been on target. They're hitting. They're all delicious. I really liked these. I have a whole pan of them. And that's the other thing about using really good ingredients. I cannot eat the whole pan all at once because it's rich. You're eating a lot of butter. I know I've said butter a lot, but it's a lot. And it was really good. And 4 eggs. So I think that it was a really good connection. And so even if I think personally, I want some more deep, angsty connections for me personally, like in my writing, I think I need a little more angst. I told my husband today, I think I'm a little too cynical for Hope Punk and Solarpunk right now. I think I need a little more angst, but that's just me. But I think it's a great story and you should definitely go and check it out. I wanted to leave you today with the thought of connecting with your community. Do you have the idea of this tool share is really sticking with me from this story, and it makes me think of how many libraries have what are called libraries of things, or the libraries of stuff, where you can go to your local library and use a 3D printer or get tools or get like a Cricut machine or gardening supplies or birding backpacks, and like all sorts of things are available at your library that aren't just books. So if you're like me and you get most of your books through like Libby or Hoopla or audio downloads, it's worth going in and looking at the library. One of the things I was literally talking about just today, one of the libraries locally to me has a puzzle library. And you can bring a puzzle, you can take a puzzle. It's amazing. How many times have you bought a puzzle for like $12 or whatever? You put it together and then it's like, okay, now what? I don't want to put it on my wall. I don't want to do it. You take it back to the library and then you get another puzzle and you've spent $12 once and then you can like go through a bunch of puzzles. Same thing with like little free libraries and little pantries. And if you can, go ahead, go donate to those. Put a book in, put in a can of something, put in some dried goods, share with your community today. Check out our story for next week called A Notorious Intergalactic Criminal by Maya Dean, and I'll see you then. Have a great week. Bye.